Welcome back. This segment of our program brought to you by Madisonville Marine, Skeeter Bass Boats, Suncatcher and Godfrey Aqua Patio Pontoons, Hurricane Deck Boats, G3 John Boats, Sportsman Series. I could go on and on and on and on and on, literally ran up the rest of the show, talking about the different makes and models that Madisonville Marine has carried over the years and they carry now. You can get down to you can get down to Madisonville Marine on Highway 411 North in Madisonville, or you could visit them, madmarine.com, because there is no better place to buy a boat. And if you're wanting a boat for sometime this summer, you've got to get with them now. Madisonville Marine, folks. Check them out. Joe Special and his team are fantastic. Okay, Lane Kiffin spoke to The Athletic this week, and he was talking about how he uses analytics to determine which transfers to go after. His quote, "A tight end that's more pass catching versus run blocking. Analytically, let's think about this. The first guy makes more explosive plays, okay, but he's not as good a blocker. If there was a way to get analytics involved, they would tell you to take the pass-catching guy because explosive plays win games more than the guy that finishes the block a little better, so you get 2 more yards on the run." I don't think that's going to shock anybody. That's not an outlandish statement, but I do think it's indicative of the major shift we have seen toward offense in pro football and college football over about the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, the SEC was winning national championships defense until about a decade ago, and then it was like even Nick Saban has said, all right, got to go with offense. Georgia had a great defense last year, but I think that's more the outlier that we're looking at. You've always had some coaches. At Tennessee, you had track guys playing receiver. So people knew we need explosive plays. But I just think that statement, doesn't that sort of underscore the shift we've seen, the fact that he's saying, blocking fundamentals, yeah, but this guy can take on 80 yards. Let's do that. I mean, it's a different thing, and I think that underscores it.
Yeah, the passing game is more prevalent and will continue to be, and I think if you have that pass-catching tight end, you're also going to be talking about versatility within an offense. So the offensive coach, especially as I think you see a shift to more offensive-minded coaches that are taking over head coaching positions. So you're thinking more matchup advantages we can find. A blocking tight end, a fullback, which we don't see quite as much. The coach is not going to find matchup advantages, so that player's not going to find the field quite as often.
I will say we're hearing this from an offensive guy. Lane Kiffin is an offensive-minded coach, so naturally I'm not surprised to hear him say that. But I think it's a fair point, and I think it shows how the game has evolved. Everybody's got to score points. Jeremy Pruitt was one of the few trying to play it that way a couple years ago. Most everybody in this conference has shifted toward thinking, I've got to find a way to score 30-plus points if I'm going to win games. That's how you do it. You get guys who can make people miss in open field. And, blocking still matters. You still want a blocking tight end. Those guys get paid in the NFL too. But if you have your choice, you're going to go get that's why receivers are getting $25 million in the NFL now.
They get paid like quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's receivers, tight ends, and running backs game.
And why tight ends try to argue that they are receivers in the NFL.
And why guys like Deebo Samuel are like, I want to be paid for the running back touches and just pay me for all the touches. Vince, there was a time, though, 15, 20 years ago, I think you'd have had a lot more coaches saying, oh, wait a second. Guy who blocks, that's important. That's ball control. I just think the number of those guys is now dwindling. I think, if you're going to go back 50 years, Woody Hayes, 3 yards of cloud of dust, would have never, ever said that. But I think as recently as 20 years ago, you'd have had a lot of the coaches in here saying, well, now, wait a second. I can go either way on this. And I think now it's why 80% of the coaches would say, give me the explosive guy who can catch a pass.
Well, I think it is a lot more coaches that are pro the passing game and the offense. My only thing with that is that kind of like when you talk about analytics, whether it's in football, baseball, whatever, you got to have a feel too. It can't just be the numbers. Here's what they say. I got to go that direction because you have to factor intangibles. Is that great pass catching explosive tight end? Is he awful at blocking? Like, can you get at least competence on the other guy in the passing game or decent passing skills to go with the blocking? So you got to have a feel with the analytics.
Or do you have a tight end that's more of a blocker that you can play two at once? And I think a lot of times college catches up with what the NFL's doing, and it looks at all of the good tight ends in the NFL in red zone. How valuable that guy is in the red zone.
Well, the NFL is adjusted to the college game too.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it works both ways. But Lane Kiffin, I mean, he's looking for somebody who can catch that ball. He's looking to throw it. He's not looking to hand it to a running back all the time and have him run behind the
But there aren't many of those guys left, is the shift. I mean, that's what's really changed in everything.
Right.
And you've got one of those guys. If you gave Heupel the choice, he may give us the lip service that blocking's important. It is, but at the same, we run about half the time, throw half the time. But at the same time, I think he would be a guy like Kiffin who would look at it and say, explosive play helps block an extra 2 yards on a run.
He wants those guys. He doesn't have those guys, so he's working around the more blocking guys that aren't explosive. So you do have to adjust.
Yeah, how much time have we spent talking about Jacob Warren's pass catching ability versus blocking? Yeah, we talk about his pass catching because of the difference it makes in the offense.
I'll say this, though. If you're talking about what to prioritize in the transfer portal and things like that, I don't know the context of what that comment was, but, I mean, one of the most coveted players in the transfer portal this year was an offensive tackle from Vanderbilt, Tyler Steen, who picked Alabama over LSU and a bunch of other schools.
Tennessee
was one of them. So, I mean, those guys were coveted. Everyone's looking for offensive tackles. Everyone's looking for pass rushers. There's still other positions that you prioritize in the transfer. It's not just about getting skill guys, but no question, that's part of it.
Certainly. I could make a case that if you're going to have an explosive offense, you better have good offensive line, though.
Exactly.
I just think it's more about people look at it more for explosive plays now than they ever have before. I think, rather than drives down the field. I mean, we're talking about here locally. We're talking about a football program that literally says we've been on the field for 8 straight plays. We got to take a shot here. Yeah. Our offensive line is wearing out. I mean, that is a totally different way of thinking. That it's all about the deep balls and explosive plays. Like I said, now Tennessee's had deep ball offenses before. Some of the guys Sterling Hinton threw to, Carl Pickens, Alvin Harper. You had Willie Galt going all the way back to 1980. But it's changed in terms of how many schools now just look at explosive first. I just think that's...
Well, even Sam Pittman, an old school offensive line coach, who does he hire to be the OC? Kendall Briles. Yeah, right. So he even recognizes, okay, this is what I've done my entire career. Here's what Kendall Briles is doing now. We need to implement that.
Good point. All right. When we come back, you can say a lot of things about Tennessee, but you can't call them cheap. Not in terms of what they pay for football wins. Somebody did a research project this week on the last 2010 to 2019, how much all the major schools paid per victory. We'll break that down. We'll look around the SEC. Does it tell us anything? Come on back on the Sports Source.